Alright, so today I want to make a video updating everyone as usual, and today's going to be a little different, number one, and then I'm going to make three videos because I was busy with some stuff yesterday, so I only had time to make one. And there's, like, I know I keep saying that there's so much stuff going on in the news, but it keeps seeming like we continue to be outdone. We have two massive stories out of the States. I'm going to talk a little bit about both of them, probably maybe not directly, but one directly. We have big stuff coming out of Canada. Like there's so much stuff going on that it's not even funny. So um, check out the video from earlier today and check out the video later today. Those are two very big important stories that I'm going to be making, as well as there's some other big stuff in this video as well to talk about. So getting right into it, Canada's up to 87,931 confirmed cases, 6,801 dead. Uh, Alberta's down to 652 active cases, 50 people in the hospital. I believe that's up by a couple, but four people in the ICU, which I believe we had five before. So again, the people in the hospital continue to be relatively steady. As far as I'm aware of it, the only people that have to worry about dying are the ones in the ICU. So, uh, yeah, that's four people, but again, that's four people out of over 4 million. And not to mention, too, Edmonton has just six people in the hospital, and that's in the hospital. One person in the ICU. We're talking about a metro area, over 1 million people. We have six people in the hospital. Like, what in the world is going on? Like, seriously, what in the world is going on? Um, Again, north of Calgary, eight people in the hospital, probably over 3 million people. Like, well, seriously, like, why in the world? Like to say, the first thing I wanted to bring up is Jason Kenney came out the other day and said, yeah, he kind of downplayed the lockdown and said, yeah, we got to go towards reopening. I don't know what his exact words were, but to me, it makes no sense whatsoever. And that it's so obvious at this point, like it's not even funny. I know I keep mentioning it, but again, so many people seem to ignore this fact that there are several U.S. states. I mean, Florida, Georgia, North Dakota. Again, those are just the ones off the top of my head. Sorry, is it North Dakota or South Dakota? I forget. But one of them never fully closed. Uh, Florida, I don't believe fully closed either. Georgia's been open for well over a month now, and there's been no issues. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the infection rate has gone down after the opening. So again, this is something that I've been pointing out for over a month now, that if we just contain old folks' homes, or old age homes, whatever you want to call them, um, and suggested that people who are people that are more overly susceptible to dying or having a severe case of it if they do catch it, to stay home, this whole problem could be completely avoided, like completely avoided. Like I say, the solution right now is so insanely obvious that looking back on it, quarantining old age homes and suggesting that older people with underlying health conditions stay home is a complete win-win, because if we would have did that off the start, we could have kept the economy open, not had 8% -8% growth in the first quarter in Canada, which again people seem to really not acknowledge that on the pro lockdown crowd, and we could have saved more lives. And that's the thing that really bothers me too, is that the pro lockdown crowd thinks that by keeping things locked down, they think, oh, we're saving lives. In reality, you're not. You supported the policies that led to so many people dying in the first place. Again, you supported open borders. You supported, don't wear, the doctors in Canada don't wear masks. Borders don't work. Now, uh, now we're going to force you to wear a mask. Like, again, these people are like, they have no credibility whatsoever. Like, no one should be listening to them. Again, I don't care what title they have. The fact that you're on, one day you say, yeah, don't do this, and the next day a month later, yeah, the complete opposite of what I said a month ago is true. And it's not a hindsight's 2020 scenario. Someone with no medical expertise, like me and like many people I've seen, was saying it. So it's not like it's just some lucky guess that people were making. No, it was blatantly obvious. Borders do work. People who are sick should wear masks. It's such an obvious thing that it's not even funny. Now, The one other thing I wanted to bring up is another prediction, in that I'm beginning to it's a prediction, in that I think that whenever things go back to normal, people will still be complaining that things aren't back to normal, because I think that when things do go back to quote unquote normal, life is going to be so much different. And again, for no good reason. For no good reason. There's no good reason why life can't go back to pretty much normal. Now again, the economy is so hurt that it's not going to, but I'm talking about all the rules and regulations and BS that the government's going to implement again. Uh, I'll just give you a perfect example. I'll point something out about how we need to go back to normal, and then people be in the comment section, "What are you talking about? The government said we're back to normal." Well, no, what normal is going to be another slew of regulations and rules, and all of it being complete BS. So again, that's kind of my prediction, that whenever things go back to normal, which isn't actually going to be normal, but they'll pretend it is normal, people are going to complain, and then the people that are trying to rebuff them are going to be like, "Hey, we are back to normal. What are you talking about?" Again, it's like after 9/11, you have, over the top security in airports, you have government spying, you have all this kind of stuff that people say, "Oh yeah, there's nothing changed." Well, of course there is. So, um, that's what I wanted to point out as far as the prediction goes. This is the big story that actually came out 2 days ago, but it came out before I made the video, so I didn't talk about it. And it's Kean Bext was kicked out of the Justin Trudeau press conference. So I don't even know if it was Justin Trudeau running the press conference, but anyway, he was kicked out of the press conference in the PMO. And RCMP kicked him out. And again, this it's gone very viral. You have 6,000 retweets, 8,000 likes. So again, for Canada, that's extremely viral. And you know, I made a video. What was it? Yesterday or 2 days ago? I forget now. Was titled, could Canada get any more corrupt? And yet, literally, like right after I recorded that video, this stuff came out. Like it's all, like I say, it's like Clown World. Like the reality is stranger than fiction these days. That, like I say, that it doesn't make any sense to, and it's not like they're being violent or they're making derogatory comments or any of that stuff. They just want to ask Trudeau tough questions. So again, if you disagree with him, fine, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I thought we lived in a free country, right? Like, I thought we lived in a free country. Part of the right to free speech is the right to do this kind of stuff. Like, again, do you not think that we should have a free and open country when it comes to journalism? You think that only a select group of people should be able to ask the government questions and report on the news? How is that in any way, shape, or form a free country? How is that in any way? And again, these are the same people that constantly rag on Trump for being so hard on CNN when CNN is objectively much worse than this. Like the one guy from CNN, Trump, he asked this question, Trump answered it, and he didn't like the answer, and he went and grabbed the mic from the person trying to take it from him because it's not his turn anymore. And Trump was super hard on him for that, and the CNNs were like, "Oh, Trump the dictator, he wants to ban all the news outlets." But was the Rebel doing any of this kind of stuff? Now, again, I'm not a huge fan of the Rebel. I don't even watch their stuff. I follow them on Twitter, but um, the only way that you support free speech and a free press and any of this kind of stuff is if you support the opposite of what you believe, having all the rights of the people you support. And this is the problem with the left. And again, it is largely the left. Let's not fool ourselves. They say, "Oh yeah, we're big on free speech," but yet they'll have this big laundry list of exceptions that basically means, yeah, you get free speech if you agree with me, but you don't if you don't. We support a free and open press, but yet we only support the outlets that support our biases. Again, it's just absolute clown world with these people. Um, so this is something out of the States, but again, it still goes to point out something that's very important. And it's titled, it's from the New York Times, I believe. And it's $21 million Brooklyn Field Hospital never saw a patient amid the virus pandemic. Now, again, the government thought that, oh, we're going to need these extra hospitals, that the virus spread is going to be so bad. And yet, they didn't even need it in the worst hit area in the world. I believe worst hit area in the world. And this just goes to show that we radically, radically overreacted. I don't think there's a word that's too hyperbolic to describe how much we overreacted from this. The amount of dead, I mean, it just went over 100,000, but those are very inflated numbers. The real number is probably 20-30% lower than that. The real numbers are comparable to the 2018 flu year, and yet I don't remember one story of people talking about how, oh, we're all going to die from the flu. We should be shutting stuff down from the flu. Um, and I don't believe it is the same as the flu. I mean, the death rate is very comparable for the overwhelming majority of the population. It is a little bit more, it spreads more, but the death rate's almost exactly the same. And no one even considered shutting things all things being equal. The only way that these people that want to keep things shut down and even supported it in the first place, the only way they have any credibility is if they look back and say, yeah, we probably should have considered shutting things down for the 2018 flu year. Like, that's the only way they have any credibility. Because, and the real reason that they want to do all this kind of stuff is that, at least in the States, they want to hurt Trump. And I mean, in Canada, it's the same thing too. It's all political, in that the government wants to implement socialism, the government wants to enrich themselves, the government wants more power. And guess what? Reopening things is basically an admission of them being wrong. If they can continually, perpetually keep things locked down, like I said, that's my other prediction too, that when things do go quote unquote back to normal, it's not going to be back to normal. They'll just tell you it is, even though there's um, a bunch of high amount more restrictions that are going to be hard, that are going to be much different than they were before. So again, just more evidence that this is a radical overreaction. And I don't understand how people can ignore so much evidence. Like, where is the evidence that we've underreacted to this in any way, shape, or form? Where is the evidence? I don't see it whatsoever. Um, so this is from the Broadbent Institute, and they say, did you know that 3 in 4 Canadians strongly support implementing a wealth tax of Canada's wealthiest people to pay for the post-virus recovery economy? Now, again, these people are just the lying and manipulation of these people's off the charts, and that you have these people on the left that think, oh, the only thing preventing us from getting our socialist welfare state is a wealth tax. That's the only reason, or just raising taxes on the rich. And I mean, for starters, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Even, like I say, even in the States, if you raised the top tax bracket, if you taxed them 100%, it still wouldn't even pay for the amount of spending the government had. I think it would pay for it for like 6 months. So the idea of, oh, well, the only thing preventing us from having all this free stuff is taxing the rich. No, it's not true. And the other problem with this is that even if it does work off the start, guess what? There's a lot less rich people to tax, because they either leave the country because you're taxing them so much, and because they're rich, they can easily afford to do that. Or two, you just tax all their wealth away, and therefore they're middle class, maybe upper middle class, and you don't tax them as much anymore. So it doesn't work. The way to fix this kind of stuff is to tax everybody less. Everybody should be taxed less. And why tax the rich less? Because the rich are the people that are the smartest people with their money. Again, the left has this false belief that the only way people get rich is by exploiting people and just letting their bank account pile up. And like I say, the only way that their beliefs also make sense is if rich people literally just let their money pile up in their bank account. They don't spend it on anything. That's the only way that their argument makes sense. But the reality is that rich people don't get rich by doing that. Rich people get rich the opposite of how poor people stay poor. Poor people stay poor because they spend money on stupid things. Now, again, most poor people um, not going to get rich pretty much no matter what they do. There is definitely some luck involved in being poor and rich, but it's very predictable about how people get rich. Rich people are smart with their money. They use the power of compound interest to help them. Poor people, what do? They spend massive amounts of money on their credit card. They pay interest. What do? They go finance a car that they can't afford, but because they can finance it for 7 years or 8 years, they can afford it. What do? They buy the most expensive house they can, and mortgage it. And why? Well, why is that a bad idea? Because you're paying interest on a ton of things. Again, rich people don't do that. Rich people use the power. Rich people are the kind of people that put their money in the bank, and the bank uses it to loan it out. Again, rich people Rich people use the power of compound interest to make money. Poor people use the power of compound interest to lose money. And that's one of the big differences. And um, the other big thing too is that it's taking people's money against their will. It is stealing. And don't pretend that it's not stealing, because if you don't think that it's stealing, well, then what you're saying, again, either it's stealing, there's two moral scenarios at play here, and it has to be one of these two. Either it's stealing, or you think it's okay because the majority of people agree with it. But because if you think that it's okay because the majority of people agree with it, then why did you have a moral problem with slavery in the past? Why did you have a moral problem with any democratic thing that was voted on? Because you're saying here that the majority of people support it. Therefore, if the majority of people support something, it must be okay. Again, if there's any ifs, ands, or buts about that, you're in the camp of people like me that don't agree with that. The idea that because a majority of people agree with something, that makes it okay, and that is the fundamental aspect of democracy, is absolutely insane, and that's the problem. So again, that's something that we shouldn't be doing. And again, if rich people make more money, they reinvest that money. Again, the way to get rich is through making money and using your money to make money, and then taking that money you make off making money and making more money. Again, it's compound interest, right? You just keep reinvesting. That's generally how rich people get rich. um, and like I said, that's the problem, is that if they have more money available to spend, well, what do? They create jobs because they spend money. If you tax the rich person less, okay, well, what might they do with that extra money? Maybe they'll remodel their house. That provides jobs for carpenters, electricians, plumbers, everything. Okay, maybe they'll buy a new car. That provides jobs for the car salesman, the people that are going to have to change the oil and change the tires and maintain it. So again, when you give them more money, they don't just hoard the money under their bed like the left seems to think. They spend the money, which creates jobs. You just want the government to take the money so you can keep it for yourself, right? Like that's the reality. Again, if people were honest about that, I would still disagree with them, but at least they're being honest, because the reason why most people support raising taxes is that they think that it means more money in their pocket, either directly or indirectly. So again, just be honest with people. You just want more money for yourself. This is from Brian Lilly. He has a story titled "Even Doctors Now Believe It's Time to Set Ontario Free." And again, this is from about a week ago, but wanted to talk about it none the same. And he says in the National Post this week, 4 doctors, all specialists in infectious diseases. So again, these are people that aren't just run-of-the-mill medical doctors. These are specialists in infectious diseases. These are people that are highly qualified to be voicing their opinion on this kind of stuff. And they all said it's time to reopen. And again, this is in Ontario. This is one of the hardest hit. Was it them or Quebec is the hardest hit province? I'm not following them quite as close. I believe they're somewhat similar. But they say even Ontario should be open. We have provinces that have cases like 1% the amount of Ontario, and yet they're still not open. Like, how does this make any sense whatsoever? Again, it just boggles my mind, the stuff that's going on these days, because most provinces should have been open over a month ago. Again, Alberta probably should have been open probably first week of May, maybe even a little sooner. Um, but yet you still have I don't know if there's any provinces that are fully 100% reopened yet. And yet we have several, again, people always point out to me, oh, you're not an expert. Who cares about your opinion? Even though almost every video I make, I include someone who is a expert, or at the very least a medical doctors that say that things should be reopened. Almost every video I've made for the last week, I do that. And yet people still are arrogant enough to point that kind of stuff out. And I keep pointing it out in that the only people that want to keep things closed are the government paid on TV medical people that are clearly benefiting from the lockdown. Again, I don't, first of all, they've been completely wrong this entire time. So anyone who still trusts them is an idiot. And even if they aren't wrong, they clearly benefit from keeping things going the way they're going. Um, so again, it doesn't make any sense to them. They mentioned here too, vaccine a long way off. Again, something I've mentioned. Um, so again, that, like I said, that's the prediction I'm betting on right now. And you have Justin Trudeau doubling down, and oh, things aren't fully going to go back to normal till we have a vaccine, even though we may never get a vaccine, or if we do, it could take 10 years. So again, that's my prediction that um, they'll say, oh yeah, it's back to normal, but it isn't actually back to normal. So the last thing I wanted to talk about here is another thing from the States, but again, it's very relevant. And this guy says, Kevin Cork, he says, why California is in trouble. 340,000 public employees with $100,000 or more paychecks cost taxpayers $45 billion via Forbes. And again, this is why these leftist forms of government do not work. That what they do when they get into power is they continuously increase the amount of people working for the government and or in the public sector. A lot of those completely unnecessary jobs, and a lot of them, both unnecessary and necessary, are way overpaid. Um, and like I say, that's the problem. Like, how can you possibly, again, if the left wants to argue in good faith, oh, we should be giving people taxpayer-funded healthcare, we should have the concept of welfare. I at least understand where they're coming from, but when they argue for stuff like this, they're absolutely insane, and they've lost all credibility. Like, they've lost all credibility long ago when they're arguing for stuff like this, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. There's no way in hell that you need 340,000 public sector employees with over $100,000 paychecks that cost taxpayers over $45 billion. I'd like to see what Canada's numbers on there, because I know Canada's population is comparable to California, but that's the problem too. Is that, I mean, look at these people, just from the California public school. You have people making $450,000 a year salaries. You have people making $443,000. You have what, 7 or 8 people making over $330,000 a year. Like, why in the world do these people make so much money? And like I say, I guarantee you stuff like this goes on in Canada too. I've seen numbers out of the U of A, the amount of employees they have that are making high six-figure salaries that they don't really do a whole lot is relatively insane too. And whenever there's public money, taxpayer money involved, there should be much, much more scrutiny involved in this kind of stuff, like much more. So anyway, again, I just wanted to point that out. So anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Also, like I say, check out my video from earlier today. Check out the video from later today. Check out my PayPal and email. I got links in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, or at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last thing, as always, check me out on Twitter if you haven't already. Check me out on BitChute if you haven't already. All the links are in the description, so you can find them all there.